Good day, and welcome to what I hope is the first of many episodes of Breaking Politico with DJ from the Nerds at Night group. And basically, what this is going to be, for me at least, is a chance to sort of filter through the headlines and the vicious comments and everything else and sort of boil down to what it looks like is actually going on in politics. Because especially in this day and age with Facebook news posts or Twitter things, all we get is a little snippet and a little headline of what's going on. And we don't really look at like we used to. Well, what does this mean? What could they be trying to do with what their plan is? And so this is a little bit more of an opinion based show. I will be citing real news sources and I will let you know when I am. But a lot of this is my personal opinion as someone who is in a very weird place politically. I'm technically, even though I'm on the older end, I'm a part of the millennial generation, being that I was born in '83. However, I leaned a lot closer, especially, and still for the most part do, to some of the ideas of true original republicanism, not modern neoconservatism, but I do mean, limiting government's roles in private business and enterprise, keeping government out of people's houses and bedrooms, and really sort of pushing for personal accountability. Now, where I differ is I don't believe that you should completely leave people out in the cold. I just believe that if we're going to spend money on infrastructure and social infrastructure, including welfare, we need to make sure that where we're spending that money is appropriate as well as capable of helping people. So that's the difference between me and modern Republicans who think that the only social welfare should just be either more prisons or a bigger army. I don't believe in either of those. I'm also, obviously, if you know me and have listened to the other show with myself and Cherie, I am very much on the pro gay, lesbian, transgender side, as well as, because then again, a lot of what my views have morphed into, I would guess by today's standards, is a lot more modern libertarian, although I can't always jive with their sense that you should do everything on your own because sometimes that's just not possible for people. Anyway, I want to go ahead and jump into some of the main topics going on here. The show is being recorded on January 26th of 2018. So if you're listening to this later on, to kind of give you a frame of reference if things have changed, this is where we're at. And the big thing going on right now, and the big thing that's going to be most of the focus of today's show, is the immigration battle. And that's where it starts, but it really starts to tell this story accurately. You have to go back a couple weeks to the government, or actually less than a week, to the government shutdown, which happened, you know, uh, here in mid January of 2018. And that was a big deal because, if you kind of take a step back and just look at all of the uh, Facebook headlines and everything else, the big thing went around is depending on your side, and I'll give you for the Democrat side, it was, oh look, Republicans control everything and they couldn't get their stuff passed and now the government shut down. And the Republican side was, well, the Democrats stopped this. And that's interesting. And when we get into a more opinionated segment later on, I'll explain this in better detail. But to me, this does show uh, really the problem with trying to blame either side is both sides got something they wanted out of this, and both sides kind of really won. And here's why, and we'll get to that in a little bit later on. But this is the big reason that the government shut down was Trump wanted his 25 billion for the wall, and Democrats wanted protection for the dreamers, as they're called, these delayed arrival citizens who came here as children, often brought by family, and really didn't have the means or the ways to go back to their native country, which is Mexico, and then come to the country legally, which is one of the big things you always see from people who don't quite get it when they're like, well, how come these people couldn't come to the country legally? It's not always possible. It's not always possible to be like, I want to look at them and go, okay, you're not poor, but still, go ahead, put up the money right now to not only travel to Mexico and not just travel on some cruise where you've got it, because I believe it's a 6 month waiting list to actually apply for citizenship. So, leave everything you've got here, go to Mexico, live for the requisite amount of time you have to be out of the country again before you can apply, and then apply, do whatever needs to be done on the current model to become a citizen, and then try to resume your life. all the while, all of the income you were earning and all of the contributions you were making to society, including taxes, which, yes, especially in the Dreamers group, they pay taxes, as well as the fact that to even be considered for the Dreamer program, you can't be a criminal, so you're one of the non-criminals, because there are immigrant criminals. I'm sorry, this is one thing I do agree with the Republican side. There are immigrants who are criminals. And I don't mean just because they're here illegally. I do mean you see it in the news. If you read the news even poorly, you see crimes committed by people who wind up being foreign nationals without proper documentation. But that doesn't just happen from Mexico. That's the thread I think that ends up missing from people here is we've done such a great job spinning the narrative that it's only because of this group. No, it happens with all groups. You know, when you can't make a living legally sometimes and don't want to put forth the effort to do it with what little options you have, such as the Dreamers, then you kind of are forced sometimes to do less than savory things, or you came over here to do less than savory things. That does happen. But anyway, I got a little bit off topic here. Back to the point. This is, when you that's why these people couldn't legally. So when you get kind of filter through all that, the other side was like, okay, so what about this option or this option, and the Democrats really were just wanting to know there was going to be something done, and the Republicans said no, pass our budget the way we want it, and we'll maybe talk was the best they were offering. Now here's where all of this here's where both sides kind of won and both sides were at fault. The Republicans could not sell their bill to their own party because of some members of their own party, especially in the Senate. The House, they really didn't. The House worked. The House, it went through the House. Everything pretty much goes through the House because Mitch McConnell and the people who lead the Republican on the House side pretty much have their people in line. But on the Senate side, there was 6 Republican senators who said no. Bear in mind, right now in the Senate, the Republicans have the power to do anything they want. So really, the Republicans' failure in all of this was the failure of their leadership to go, look, this is what we've got right now. This is how we feel we need to get going. Do it. We'll fight over the rest later. And this was also, by the way, the same problem that plagued Obama for his entire presidency. I said pregnancy. Wow, I'm tired. Edit that out. For his entire presidency, because he couldn't get the Democrats all on the same page when they had control of everything. And it's that lack of leadership on both sides that is what's been leading to all these flip-flops in elections. We get behind a candidate and we get behind their team and go, okay, this guy, he's going to do what we want him to do and it's going to be great. But then before it even gets to the opposition, his own party stymies things. And it doesn't work, and then things don't change, and we get frustrated as a nation. And when we move on to the other side, the same thing happens. So then it's like, what are we doing here? And it's happening now. You see, so with the super low approval rating of Trump and, the inability of getting his own party on his page and a lot of the dissension we've seen in the ranks of the Republicans, it's going to cost them. It already has. Look at Alabama. Now, granted, right now it's not costing them it's not a short shot, I guess I should say, because if there wasn't the, sexual assault allegations against Ray Moore, he would have won. The Democrats aren't quite strong enough yet to really roust out candidates in these red states. And that's going to lead to another point later on when we talk about how the Democrats need to pick better battles. So, anyway, so the big deal to come out of things in the recent weeks is Trump deciding to say, look, I'll give you a path for citizenship. And he seems to want 2 big things, and for better or worse, if he really is as good at business as he says he is, draw your own conclusions. Even if he gets one of these 2 things, he's won and deserves it. The 2 things he wants is a $25 billion trust fund for the wall. By the way, the wall won't work. Sorry. If you believe it'll work, you're delusional at best and stupid at worst. And I'm sorry, that's the truth. First of all, ladders. You know, those things that let you climb over tall things. Second, most immigrants don't come to this country just walking over the border because guess what? We already have Border Patrol. Now, that's not to say that they don't and that there isn't people who do, but most people now who really want to get in this country illegally fly, or they come in through legal short term means and they just stay. And this is where I think he really wants to make the change. And this is the other part of what he's offered, which is he wants severe changes to the immigration law. He wants to get rid of things like legacy citizenship, where it's members of your family can immigrate easily because you're here, and visa lotteries and things like that. And honestly, if you're pro immigration, that's the one you hope he doesn't get. Because, yes, the wall is going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be, in a lot of ways, a future monument to the embarrassment of this country, but we got tons of those. Our country is nothing but monuments to stupid decisions at times. And if we can keep the path open for people who add to our economy to come to this country legally and continue to add to our economy, that's the real victory, folks. That's the real thing we should want. So we'll see. And again, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm kind of hoping he gets the wall. He gets to build. He gets to play with his building blocks. He gets to put his name on it. And that, because look at the guy lives in a house made out of, or in a townhouse in New York, whatever it is in New York, with solid gold fixtures. This is a dude who loves gaudy. So let him have his big gaudy wall that he can show off to all of his rich friends after he's out of office, going, "Hey, look, I built that." And we preserve the path for people, good people, to come to our country, which was what this country was founded on. Whether you like it or not. Sorry that we can't get people to come here from nicer countries to the views of Trump, because that's not why people leave their home countries. You know, for all of its flaws, leave America and move to the Sudan or move to Iran. You're not going to do that. Well, for the people who come to our countries or come to our country from other countries, that's what they're doing. They're getting away from the worst situation to somewhere better. And we see a lot of Americans who get out of America to go somewhere better. Look at all of our famous expatriates who live in other countries now. There's a lot of citizens who choose to work overseas and live in other countries when they can, because they went to better, in their opinion. And we really need to stop fighting this notion that everything has to be us number one. And that's all that's what Trump won on is America first, and America's the greatest. No, we don't want to be the greatest. We don't want to be this huge, big, dick swinging country that looks over all other countries and goes, "Oh, well, this is why we're better than you," because then we tried that with George W. Bush. We tried that. We tried being that big, dick swinging country, and we're going to go in here, and yes, I know it's not what the world wants, but we know what's best because we're the greatest. Ha ha ha. And we spent 10 years in a pointless war that got thousands of American servicemen killed or injured, is doing untold damage to their mental state still, of which we're not even able to provide accurate health care to. And that's the problem. That's the problem with being nationalist. I have no problem with wanting to make our country better. That's what we should always strive for. Better should be the highest goal. We should look at everything and go, what can we do better? And sometimes it is doing things that more liberalistic people may hate. Sometimes we have to go, well, that is important to some, but we have to think about the country as a whole. And maybe we do reduce welfare benefits to certain people. I think we should start with corporations. I think we should start with a lot of the subsidization of businesses that go on out there, and from everything from paying farmers not to grow food to drive up food prices to corporate welfare to places like Walmart, who then lay off thousands of workers so they can turn around and say they're giving a fake raise to people, which, by the way, from my understanding, and I don't want to speak to it as it's fact because I'm still, digging up the thing, but for the new Walmart raises, apparently it's for people who have been there years, for years. And also, it's only for people who the bigger raise. I'm sorry, I was actually trying to find the notes real fast. I apologize. But the bigger raise goes to full time, obviously, and most of their part time employees are still only going to be making $10.58 from $10. Okay, think about that for a minute. And their full time, what few full time employees they have, by the way, will go from 13 to $13.38. Now, don't get me wrong, raises are great to a fault. And when you mix a raise with a tax cut, sometimes you actually have that hedging that you need to actually get some progress. Because the problem with just raising pay, and I'm getting off on a tangent here, and this goes back a year or two to when this was really big, like with the fight for 15 and stuff, is if you do nothing to hedge inflation and you create a dramatic raise in labor costs, you're going to lose jobs. Pure and simple. We aren't a produce more to make more economy anymore. We haven't been for most of my life. We are a cut every cost possible to raise stock price economy. And that's what they do. And I saw this firsthand, like literally firsthand, as in I had to fire people or was on the decision to fire people when I worked in the fast food industry in Illinois, when and I was just a little assistant manager and store manager, but Illinois raised its pay for its employee, and I think and at the time it was pretty high. I think at the time federal minimum wage was 5 something an hour, and they went to 8. And and I was working in the state capital city, so already kind of a high cost of living. And we were just sitting going, well, we can reduce people to part time to cut costs and just to keep some employees, and then we still had to fire 2 or 3 people. That's just one fast food joint in one city, so you figure at very least 30-40%, I believe it was final reporting, had to do that, had to fire at least one person because of it. So that's a lot of people who wound up jobless and a lot of damage to the economy because nobody did anything to hedge inflation. Nobody said, well, tell you what, we're going to mandate you pay more to your employees. However, we're going to cut your rate as a business, especially if you're a smaller business. We're going to cut your interest rates on business loans by X%, or we're going to reduce your tax or your tax rate, which is a little bit of a misnomer anyway, because many businesses get away paying little to no taxes. But still, especially for smaller businesses, that could have been a big deal, especially in the state of Illinois at that time, because again, a lot of lower income people lost their jobs. And you make that money up because if you've hedged inflation so and you see these memes all the time on Facebook where it's like, oh, well, here's what happens when you raise pay, and you know hey, great, you get an extra $100 a week, so let's say you have $500 a week now, and your grocery bill has gone up to $200 from 75, and your power bill and blah blah blah. And they're not wrong, because again, that's exactly what I'm saying. If you have an uncontrolled raise or even just a steep raise in labor costs, you have a steep rise in prices if you do nothing to hedge those off. And you make up some of those. And to get back to my point, you take back some of those hits in reduction of taxes and such between sales taxes with more money being spent and with reduction in welfare benefits. when you can actually start moving people from full government assistance to partial government assistance or child care assistance. There are so many people that I've known in my life. Now, I'm not going to deny their system rants. I hate them. And I will take every turn in this show and in life to point them out. However, first of all, and I'm going to go into this more later as time goes on, because I fill a whole show up describing the difference between welfare rats and people just trying to get by. But not everybody who you see driving a semi nice car or who has a semi fancy piece of technology is ripping off the system. There are lots of ways people get things that are absolutely fine and shouldn't be penalized just because they're on assistance. And we can go into more of those. In fact, we're about to, as long as the government stays open, go through one of the big ways a lot of people get that now, which is tax refunds on the work they are able to do. But back to the point. If you could move people off of welfare by childcare alone, that would save a ton of money. Because that's what happens. You get people who, for better or worse, ended up in a situation where they are not able to work because they can't afford daycare. I make good money, not great money. I'm not rich, but I make money to where I very rarely feel like every paycheck. I live slightly above paycheck to paycheck. Like there's a lot of paychecks, especially if I don't do stupid things like eat out all the time or whatever. I'd probably spend no money. I'd have a pretty good amount, and I still can't afford to put my kid in daycare. And I only have one of that age. So imagine if you're somebody with two kids or even still just one kid and you're not working a mid-level career position like I am and you're working for minimum wage and you're only part-time because between costs for insurance and everything else, most employers now are only doing part-time and it costs you more than your paycheck for childcare. What do? You can't fully quit working. You have to rely on assistance. That's the problem. We have hardworking people on assistance who need that assistance, and the stupid answer to it is, well, you just take away their assistance. That'll help. No, it won't. You have to look at the problem and go, well, what can we do? Again, and this goes back to my beliefs. If we're going to spend the money anyway, what's the better way to spend the money? And what's the better things we can put in place to not need to spend the money in the first place? What better assurances in our social network can we put in to make sure that people are taken care of? But anyway, that's kind of, I gotten off on a few tangents, but I feel like these are important to help frame my opinions of things going forward. But yes, so the big deal with Trump right now on the budget seems to hinge on what he'll get out of giving path of citizenship to the Dreamers, to the DACA program people. And again, and oh yeah, I picked on the Republicans a little bit. I'll go over the Democrat side for why the shutdown happened. Obviously, they fought really hard for getting what they wanted on immigration. And they were right to use the economy as hostage because the Republicans did it under George W. Their fault in all of this was they backed off. Because as soon as McConnell and as soon as Trump said, okay, well, we'll work on this. We'll do something on immigration. They changed their votes and an extension was allowed to go through. It's only for 3 weeks. Wow. Sorry about that. If that bled through, something just made noise on my system. Anyway, but that's what they did. Is they said they got the Democrats to play ball by saying, "Hey, okay, we'll work on this. We'll work on it." And that's the only assurance they got is that they're going to do something about it. They probably should have held out for something more concrete. They should have said, well, here's the deal. Let's put a deal in principle together right now of we'll give you this concession, but you have to give us this concession, and it's got to be, as ironclad as it can be without actually being made into law. And that's their fault. They're too quick to back off when they have the needle. And the other thing Democrats need to do is, and this also goes for anti-Trump people on Facebook, stop caring about personal life bullshit. And by that I mean things like this porn star who's running around saying he had an affair. You mean a famous rich guy who, before his political career, was nothing more than a reality TV show, slept with a chick who was hot and looked like his daughter? Oh my God. Alert the internets. This is the first time. I mean, it's disgusting, but it's not really something that Democrats or anti-Trumpers should really be heavily focusing on. Because A, we've already seen time and time again that the various religious right members who swear Trump was sent by God will give him excuses. They gave excuses to everybody else who they've ever supported because it isn't about what God actually said or this book. We can't go by that. Heck, if we went by what God said in his book, Republicans wouldn't exist. Republicans are literally the opposite of everything Jesus ever taught us about how to handle the poor, the sick, and the aged. So it's not that's not the thing. They want someone who they believe will back their agenda, and as a result, they'll do whatever they have to do. The charlatans that they are and the idolaters in the eyes of their Lord that they are. So this is coming from a hardcore atheist, but you remember that if I am wrong, which this is funny side note, and this is the one religious bashing thing I'll kind of say is, why are faithful people so scared to be wrong? I'm not. If I'm wrong and I die and there is an afterlife, I'm wrong. And I'll deal with that then. I would like to think that if there is this, concept of a God, he'd look at my life and not just the fact that I didn't read a certain book and pray a certain way and eat certain things and above all else pay a certain amount of money, even though the very same book they wanted us to read is riddled with instances of where we're not supposed to give our money to people, that money is in and of itself a form of evil. But anyway, I digress. And this has been pretty fun, and looking at the clock, I want to try to keep these about a half an hour, maybe more when they're important. And I'm not quite sure when this will see the light of day. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. And comment on wherever you get this from iTunes or YouTube, because just like with the regular Nerds at Night show, this will be uploaded at YouTube. And if you have, dissenting opinion, go ahead. If you're going to be a keyboard cowboy and think you can type a bunch of poorly spelled, badly, worded insults, go ahead. Because A, you'll be great joke fodder for the show, and you will. And B, all you'll do is prove my point that it's impossible to look past the headlines. I have actually said, if you think I'm just some anti-Trump idiot, 2 or 3 things where I've given Trump credit for getting what he wants. That's leadership. Whether you agree with the leadership or not, the mark of any president is what they got done. And Trump is on path to get at least 1 or 2 of his biggest campaign promises done. And he's technically already gotten one with the tax overhaul. So, yeah, I may not like him, and I would never vote for him, but I will give the devil his due and say he's getting what he wants, and that's leadership. Whether it's good leadership or bad, history will tell. But right now, he's getting what he wants. So, if you have a real opinion, you can, leave a comment, or you can, there will be a Facebook page for this particular show up soon. I'm still working on some of the logistics of that. So when it is up, you'll be able to leave comments there. And you can also go to the blog section at nerdsatnight.com. There'll be a political show blog where I'll recap this show and put some notes there as well as some other stuff. One other main thing I wanted to say the Democrats need to do when focusing, and this kind of ties into the notion of picking a better battle, is Trump's decision to back dying forms of energy like coal and natural gas and all of that at the expense of tariffs that are destroying the solar panel business. That's what they need to focus on, because for Mr. America First and Mr. Economy First, he is putting hardworking Americans out of jobs, which will be the future. Now, whether or not it's a future for our country or a future for another country to make money off of, it remains to be seen. But if that keeps happening, eventually coal's going to run out or become too dangerous to get for the cost. And we're going to be stuck once again behind the energy 8 ball because Trump cared more about short-term victories and poll numbers for a small group of workers in this country at the expense of the much bigger group of progressive thinkers. And they need to focus on that. And they need to get behind the research of the dollar impact, and they need to show how long, yes, you might have this job now, and I'm glad you have this coal job now, but it looks like in the area you're in, you're probably looking to have this job for 2 or 3 more years, and in that time you could be working in coal while learning how to transition to the other forms of energy. Maybe you go from breathing in black dust underground getting coal to learning how to install solar panels or work on the turbines that generate wind energy. You could be using that time more wisely to transition to something better and more secure for your family's future. Time will tell. Or we'll all be sitting here, missing the days we could listen to podcasts because we don't have the money to pay for electricity anymore. And with that, I think I'll go ahead and end this show. I think our next show topic will be the ongoing Russia investigation and really where it needs to go, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm going to try to have that show up in the next couple of days. I'm going to try to do these a little more frequently than the Nerds at Night podcast, which pretty much Glacial Drift is more frequently than my podcast right now, which we'll have more details on when we actually record the Nerds at Night podcast, hopefully later tonight. Anyway, I'm DJ, and this has been Breaking Political. Hopefully, we will be back again soon.